Good afternoon. I don't know if it's the same for everyone else. I was just having flashbacks to sitting in cognitive science lectures when I was back at university, and I've had to sort of pull my brain back together because I'm going to talk about something slightly different. It is a tech day. I'm the founder of a technology company, but what I want to talk to you about today is not technology per se, but actually culture, and why culture matters in how we build all companies, and particularly technology companies. So Olivier is one of the few people that actually says my name in the French way. I always just do the Australian corruption of Didier. And as Olivier mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder of CultureAmp. And about 5 years ago, I left Rising Sun Pictures because I had the world's most naive business model. I had in my mind I wanted to do something bigger than just work for Hollywood. And so I sat down and I drew on a piece of paper, 10,000 by 10,000 equals 100 million. And I thought, I want to build a business where tens of thousands of companies want to spend tens of thousands of dollars a year with me. And I was thinking about what's the problem I want to solve. And as a CEO, you're essentially a glorified psychiatrist. And so I got interested in the space of organizational development and how you build a software company that can help and support this. Was anyone in the room at Above All Human? Okay, a few. So the talk I'm going to give today is an extended version of the talk that I gave at Above All Human. So you can leave now. If you say, I've seen it, it's okay, I can go. No, hopefully there'll be some extra stuff here that will make sense, because that was a 10-minute presentation, which is a very awkward period of time. So around this time last year, we were enjoying our last few days as a bootstrap company. We got to the point where we had about $1 million in revenue, about 150 customers, some of the best companies in the Valley as clients. And as Olivier mentioned, we took a Series A, and we used that to grow both the company and also our footprint. So we're actually 64 people today. We have an office in San Francisco. We have an office in New York. We have our biggest office here in Melbourne. And this picture up here is actually where our surveys were taken in October last year. So we're seeing we're being used all over the globe, and we're increasingly being used by companies, not just tech companies, media, retail, lots of different industries, some traditional, some new. And this year, the goal for us is to continue that and actually make that quite a big dent in that goal that I set myself. So this year, the goal for us is to pass 1,000 customers. We probably should be about 1,500 customers by the end of the year, and we'll be about 150 people. But the thing that I'm worried about the most, the thing that I'm the most concerned about, is this concept of being a culture-first company. That's what we want to help our clients do, but it's also what we want to be. So, why build a culture-first company? You already know the punchline, but the way you motivate people at work has changed. And the thing is, it's not because of the people. It's because of the nature of the work. So, I actually do honestly believe that Gen Y, in the way that we talk about it, Gen X, Millennial, Boomer, does not exist. It's a cohort effect. And the problem we have is that we're a subscriber, and we're saying, you have to change your workplace, you have to do this thing, you have to do that thing because you're hiring people of a certain age. This is not true. Back in 1938, Henry Ford said, "Why is it when all I want is a pair of hands, I get a brain attached?" And unfortunately, so much of the way we think about the world of work is still stuck in that period where we're trying to work out how to motivate these hands and make them work. And increasingly, the work we're doing, I mean, think about the conversation we just had. Like, the problems we're trying to solve are cognitive problems. And when you're trying to solve a cognitive problem, it actually requires a very different environment. And this is the core of the issue. If you want to create an environment that motivates the brain, it's not about the age of the people you're employing. It's about the type of work you're asking them to do. And increasingly, we're asking people to do this sort of work. And if you want to get stuck into that, you actually have to think about what culture means. And unfortunately, this is what culture means for a lot of people. So I want to play a little quick game of culture bingo. If you work in a company that has one of these words in your value statement, put up your hand. Who has integrity? Who has customer service? Accountability, teamwork, and innovation? So we get the full bingo set. Like, everybody here is just like everybody else. And the problem with this idea is that culture is not meant to be soft and fluffy. Culture is meant to be built for a purpose. And in the evolution of our companies, we're sort of getting to this point now where we're realizing, back in the 50s and 60s, we were measuring financial metrics. And then we started to realize that they were a lag indicator. And that the lead indicator on this was satisfaction of the customer, what we could do for that customer, and we started to get better at using that data. So Edward Deming's much often quoted phrase, "In God we trust, all else bring data." We got really good at using data in understanding customers. Well, the lead indicator on customer satisfaction is actually people centricity. How do you create an environment that can deliver that promise to a customer? And we're actually flying blind. We're not very good at understanding that. So if I go back to my Hollywood roots, Brad Bird said this in a McKinsey article: if you have low morale, for every dollar you spend, you get about 25 cents worth of value. If you have high morale, for every dollar you spend, you get about $3 of value. People should pay more attention to morale. And this actually gets to the heart of it. This is not a soft and fluffy thing that you do because you want to create a nice place to work. It's about actually, in a world where you're trying to get people's heads, it's about creating an effective place, and it's about making the money you spend actually work. So what is the DNA of a culture-first company? Now, we've launched over 1 million surveys. We've worked with over 500 clients and over 4,500 surveys through those clients. And there are 3 things that come back when you look at the core of the companies that do it really, really well. The first is that they see a world that others don't. So I'm hoping that pretty much everyone in the room knows this quote, but there's a company that has a mission statement which is, "Humans were meant to be an interplanetary species." Does anybody know who that is? SpaceX, yes. And what I love about it is it's one of those things when you hear it, the hairs on your arm prick up. And it's not about leading a market or being number one or achieving some market valuation. It's about doing something that most people are even afraid to think is possible. And at the heart of actually starting to build a culture is this idea of actually framing something that people get scared about when they think about the reality of trying to achieve it. And when it comes to the culture, when it comes to what we call values, I think a critical thing is to realize that what you want with values is not what you want to be on a good day. It's not this idea of this sort of moral world that we want to live in. So all those things, integrity, honesty, respect, all of that sort of stuff, they're reflections of the world that we want to live in. When you're talking about the company that you're building, you're talking about the culture that you're creating, you actually have to go much deeper than that. You have to go for what you're willing to hurt for. So this is a corruption of the Shakespeare. "Bleed with me and I'll forever be your brother." And at the heart of that is the core of what values actually mean, which is these are the things we share that we care about so much that we're willing to hurt for them. And hopefully it's not physical pain, it's not enough sleep, not enough time with our friends and family, not enough much money as we could get somewhere else. There's a reason why you're willing to go through all of that. It's because you share something that you care about. And the real crux of it, to do this right, is that you have to turn that into something that is a promise to a customer. So a brand is a promise to a customer, culture is how you deliver on it. And the thing that drives me nuts is when you have a team over here, the marketing team, deciding what the brand promise will be and how all that's going to work, and then you have a totally different team over here that's talking about the values and working out what the culture is going to be, and the two have got their backs to each other. These two things have to be deeply intertwined if it's actually going to work, because it's the brand promise that actually creates the opportunity for the company to exist. It's what makes it possible. But it's the culture that delivers on that, and those two things have to be as above, so below. So when we talk about culture, when we talk about culture first, and we talk about the types of organizations that are successful, it's like, okay, that's good in theory. What does it actually look like? And one of the values, which I'll share with you in a sec about us, is to have the courage to be vulnerable. So one of the things that I always like to do when I get up and talk about this is actually talk about our own set of values and what they mean to us and why we have them. And it goes back to that thing that I said right at the start, which is I'm building a software company to create loops, create feedback for culture-first companies all over the world. But to do that, I actually have to be a culture-first company. And it's that thing of brand and values being the same thing. What we're trying to create and what we want to be are the same thing. So who are we? Our goal, it's not as good as the SpaceX one, I have to admit. But what we want to do, the problem we want to solve as an innovation issue is to create these feedback loops for 10,000 companies worldwide. And the reason this is an interesting problem to us is a VC was saying to me that the real power and the value in innovation is not just the first time it's done, but that point at where you get the cost of delivering it so far below the value that it's creating that it's self-sustaining. And for us, the opportunity here in what we can do with technology, what we can do in helping companies get better at using data to help on people and culture, is that we can solve the accessibility problem. how do we get software into the hands of every company with more than 50 people? Like at one point I was sort of worried that the thing I was shooting for, the market I was shooting for, I was looking at something, Optimizely actually, which is a client of ours, and I was saying how awesome it was because they had such a huge market of all the marketing teams that had to A/B test their web pages. And then I stopped and thought, actually, we have a much bigger market than that. Every single company that has more than 50 people has the problem we're trying to solve. And that's actually the thing that we're going after, which is how do we enable all of those people to A, treat this seriously, but actually B, do something with it. And the values that sit beneath that for us are have the courage to be vulnerable, trust people to make decisions, learn faster through feedback. And the last one has a question mark on it because it's actually a process that we're going through at the moment in deciding whether or not this is actually a core value for us. And I wanted to share with you my own thinking about it because it sort of gives you an insight into how this works. So is everyone familiar with the concept of assume good intent and the power of the idea? Ish. So the basic idea of assume good intent is that so much of the organizational anti-patterns, so many of the things that create friction and pain and bureaucracy in organizations occur because we don't trust the person we're talking to. And often we're assuming that they're trying to do something that's to our detriment. And so there's this idea that if you force people as a matter of principle to assume good intent and to act accordingly, a lot of those patterns actually disappear. And it's incredible because it puts the onus back on you as an individual. So you get an email that annoys you, you have to stop and ask yourself, what would need to be true for this actually to be a good idea? Maybe there's something I'm not thinking about. Maybe there's something I'm missing. And so we've been talking about this internally because we've been seeing it as something that's been coming up time and time again, as something that we need to grab hold of and something we need to make real in the organization. And the aha moment for me when we were talking about it is I said, I'm actually willing to hurt for that. You know, I'm willing to allow somebody to do something dumb or for somebody to, go somewhere where I don't think it's the right thing to go if I've done it because I've allowed them or assumed good intent because I want all the other good stuff that comes with it. And so that process of finding values that are meaningful to you is so important. You can't put somebody else's name on there and look at it and say, hey, that's us. It's got to be something that's very distinct with what you're willing to hurt for. So for us, it's that have the courage to be vulnerable is about the growth and the way we want our clients to grow. We have to mirror that internally. If we're going to get somewhere, we actually have to put ourselves in a place that is distinctly uncomfortable. And I won't go through all the values, but one of the things that's a theme that I've heard quite a lot today, and that concept of trusting people to make decisions is not just internal, it's also inherent in how we build our software. Our goal is not to do everything for people. Our software is to give insight. Humans still need to make decisions. And so that's actually a philosophical tenet for us. When we're building software, when we're building data analytics software, we need to trust people to make decisions with the insights we give them, not seek to make those decisions for them. And the promise that we make, and the thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about today, is this idea of a people geek, which Olivia mentioned at the start. Because at the heart of our whole organization, if somebody said to me, what are you the most proud of in what you've done with CultureAmp? It's that we've been able to create a community of people geeks worldwide. We are an inbound company. We don't do a lot of outbound selling. The way we get clients is we build a community of people that we call people geeks that care about this problem, and we sit inside it. And it's this idea of being at the center of something much bigger than yourselves and being willing to do that. We don't have to control it. You try and control it, you actually limit its ability to grow. And we've found, a year and a half ago, this was just an idea. Last year, we ran 20 People Geek events globally. We're running 130 this year. This one, which you can see up on the slide, was actually in San Francisco. We ran an unconference with all of the best VPs of HR across SF. I'm up on the stage with Molly Graham there, she was at Facebook, wrote a lot of the stuff about culture at Facebook, and is now the COO at Quip. And it was this kind of incredible moment to be there, to have flown over from Australia and realize that half the people in that room had never met each other. They were there because we'd willed that community into being. And our company exists because that community exists. And that's our brand promise. And those the values that sit behind that are the ones that come together to make that work. And that's actually the heart. That's the heart of the message. That's what I want you to take away from this. You hear today all of this stuff about technology and what technology can do. But if you're actually trying to build a technology company, or any company for that matter, the thing that you need to appreciate is that the world of work is changing, and so should you. Thank you.